Hey, before we get into the episode, I wanted to let you know that my book, Melanated Midlife, is available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. This is the manual that you have been looking for so that you can design a midlife season exactly as you deserve it. So get a copy for yourself and then share it with other midlife baddies that are in your circle. I can't wait to hear what you think about it. All right, let's get back to the episode. Hey there, welcome to the Melanated Midlife Podcast. I am Akilah Willery, and I am your midlife hype girl. Normally, I'm giving you all of this inspirational information about how you are going to uplevel your career. But today, I want to take a little bit of a glimpse behind the scenes because we're going to talk about menopause. In particular, we're talking about how I have been managing menopause while also building a business. And if you also are in a career where it's causing you to have to be more visible right when your body is acting all brand new, just like mine, then this is going to be for you because you are not alone. You and I, we are the same people. We're dealing with the same drama. And I can tell you that I was prepared for the hot flashes. I was prepared for that part, but I was not prepared for how menopause was going to mess with my brain. And today, I want to tell you how I am managing all of these symptoms, how I'm protecting my energy, and all of the things that I'm taking, including hormones, that is helping me be at the top of my game. So take some notes. I got a bunch that I'm going to share with you, but this episode is about managing menopause while managing your career. All right, let's get into it. Now, before we get into this, I want to stress very clearly that I am not a doctor. Yes, I might be an educational doctor and, all of that. I can give you a lot of tips and research, but I am not a medical doctor. I urge that you take whatever I'm sharing with you today just truly as my experience. And maybe by learning about my experience, it's going to inspire you to have a little more confidence to go in with your own healthcare provider and have a deeper conversation about what is going to be the right intervention or the right management plan for you to get through this as well. So please don't come at me if there's something that I'm saying right, wrong, that you disagree with or whatever. It is just for me to share with you what's going on and what is working for me. So I can tell you that these are real experiences. And when my symptoms showed up, I was 47. And I'm saying all that, again, dealing with the brain fog. So I am 53 at the time of recording this. Roughly, I have been going through this part of my journey for about 6 years. It was 47 when I had my last menstrual cycle and haven't seen any bleeding since then. And, hey, if you haven't noticed already, we're going to be real in this conversation. So keep that in mind that this has been a 6-year window that I've had to kind of figure some things out. And when I tell you that, I want to be honest, I can be real funny about it. But all in all, if we can't laugh about this stuff, we might cry because I think probably the best way that I can describe this whole onslaught of symptoms and things that were changing is that I felt out of control. I no longer felt like I was in control of my own body. I definitely was not expecting that it would have such a huge impact on my brain function, but for sure, from a day-to-day, moment-to-moment, hour-to-hour basis, I can't say that I fully was in control of whatever my body was going to do. With that being said, I want to, tell you a quick story about back in November of the previous year. We had a fantastic event. Oh my gosh. And just thinking about it, it brings a smile to my face. We had a live in-person event, Melanated Midlife Live, and that was a live podcast recording, which was in celebration of my book release of the same name, Melanated Midlife. And that was, everything about it was just fantastic. I don't think I can say anything about that event and have any regrets. It was just beautiful. We had 3 powerhouse panelists that were there to share their inspirational stories about career, money, relationships. It was really good. And then in the audience were 50 people who were there to celebrate the book launch, but also to listen to the stories, to watch the show. And we had full production, everything, cameras, lights, a full production team, had a live DJ. We had hors d'oeuvres, we had cocktails. It was beautiful. And everything was just going according to plan until it was time for me to speak. And if you watch any of previous episodes, you will see me holding my iPad in my lap or in a desk in front of me. And there is a reason that I always have that iPad in front of me. It's not because I'm just, wanting to have it, an extra thing sitting on the desk, but it's my notes. It's for me to have a little bit of insurance in case I have some type of menopausal brain fog. And wouldn't you know, just as we were opening Melanated Midlife Live, where I'm giving the welcome and kicking off the whole event or whatever, I was made it far enough to be able to introduce the panelists, the guests that were there to speak, and welcome everyone into the room. But when it was time to actually start with the programming, mine totally went blank. And if you got, I want you to go back and look at that episode we recorded, and it's broken up into two parts. Go back and look at that episode, and I want to see if you can catch when this was happening because of course, with the beauty of recording and editing or whatever, there's a lot that we were able to maybe condense. But at the very beginning, there was a spot where I'm truly looking at my iPad. Everything that I want to say was right there in front of me. And my brain just would not connect like, hey, read this. And then words are supposed to come out of your mouth. That didn't happen. And there was like this weird, awkward silence where the audience was like, okay, something's supposed to be happening right now. But my brother-in-law, who's my production partner, was over to the side like, hey, are you going to say something? And the DJ didn't know what to do. So he starts playing some music. And then like a 20-second delay, all of a sudden, then I'm able to start talking. It was the weirdest, most awkward moment ever. And of course, once that starts happening, I start going into this natural stress response. So, of course, a hot flash is going to break out. And I had on this cute linen dress. And of course, I wore linen in November because I knew I was going to be hot. Anyway, all of that happening. And then sweat breaks out down my back. I am sitting in a chair in a thin linen dress. So, you know what else? I can't stand up because I can tell the sweat is dripping down my back, down the crack of my ass. So, if I stand up, I'm going to have this big wet spot where my butt is. So, eh, this is just one of, I don't know, hundreds of episodes from my history that made me understand that this menopause thing is not just about having one bad moment or having one bad day or week. This was going to be my life for now, for the conceivable future. So I needed to figure out how was I going to manage this so that I could be at the top of my game because at the same time, I am building a business and you are witnessing part of that business just by watching and supporting this podcast. So I have clients where I am their career coach and we are talking about very, very serious things, their livelihood when we show up together for calls or meetings or teaching sessions or what have you. And I can't have a day when I say, hey, girl, I got to cancel our meeting today because I'm having a bunch of hot flashes. Or I don't feel like showing up today because I've got some crazy headaches and fatigue and everything. No, these people are paying me good money so that I can show up for them, so that I can work on the back end to make them the best that they can be. All of these symptoms that are happening to me, due to menopause at the same time, I had to figure out a way to put that stuff in check. I knew it was going to be a part of my existence going forward. But just like if I would have cut my arm or whatever, there would have been some type of intervention where I would have done something to stop the bleeding, clot the bleeding, put a Band-Aid on it, make sure that there was cleaned up, no infection or whatever. I had to start thinking, okay, if there was anything else going on with me, I would have taken some type of immediate action. So why would this onslaught of other symptoms have been any different? And that was, I will tell you, this is a more enlightened version of me because the younger, less enlightened version of me would have assumed that this was something I just needed to push through, that this was something that I would just, be strong enough to get by, get through it. And now, if this is you, if you are in this situation right now and you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to buy a fan and we going to deal with it. Girl, it is not necessary for you to just use brute force to get through this. You can be so much kinder to yourself by just seeking out some type of intervention, some type of new routine that is going to help minimize the stress and the disruption that these symptoms are going to bring into your life, and just get to some type of combination of things that's going to once again bring you back to yourself. So with that being said, that is how I got to this point after 5-ish years of assuming that I could handle it, assuming that I could just get through it. I finally decided, no, it is time to actually take a dedicated approach to how I'm going to make it through this phase to feel, like I was at the top of my game and just not lose my mind in the process. So this is what I want to share with you today. Again, I'm just your cute Black girlfriend that is sharing what works for her, but I hope that this is information that's going to empower you to go and figure out something that will work for your own routine. And I will tell you that for this episode, I am recording this in front of my computer because I've got so many notes. I've got written notes. I've got a screen that's over to the side because there is so much that has gone into just me figuring this out. And I don't want to leave out any details because I don't know what's going to be helpful to you or not. But I will tell you that I actually found this one article that was published in a medical journal. So again, I am not an MD. I just read a lot. But in this particular article, it was a study that was published in 2022 that talked about the lack of support that African American women in menopause receive from their healthcare providers. And I'm opening with that stat, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why I'm not going to the doctor. Stick with me. But it was really encouraging more and more women to share about their experiences so that we can be aware of some of the discrepancies that are taking place. Basically, teaching you why you need to advocate for yourself. And one thing that stat, and I'll share a couple of stats with you, and I'm making sure I'm reading over here to the side so that you know that I'm trying to get this right. Basically, a survey that went out to a controlled or a particular group of African American women said that 7 in 10 are dealing with severe menopause symptoms daily. 7 out of 10, 70%. That again, these are daily symptoms. It doesn't mean like it's something that you get one day and then you don't experience this again for another week or another month. Kind of like with our menstrual symptoms, we would have a whole lot happening within a 4 or 5 day period once a month. But with the menopause symptoms, we're dealing with these types of disruptions every day. So yeah, you may not be bleeding anymore, but you still have other things that are all this mixed bag of interruptions to your daily world that are happening every single day. And from day to day, hour to hour, you don't know which one is going to pop its ugly head out. So whew, I feel I'm doing all this trauma dumping in this episode. But anyway, I want to make sure you understand all of what's going on. So, as far as the symptoms that are outlined in this particular article, they're talking about what they call the big three. And yes, I have experienced all three of these: night sweats, hot flashes, and vaginal dryness. And roughly over 90% of these women that were surveyed were experiencing what they call those big three symptoms. And they were happening at a longer duration for Black women, African American women. It was happening at a longer duration as compared to their white counterparts. So Black women, 81%, according to this particular medical journal, were experiencing the symptoms for 9 years or longer. 9 years, my dear. So at least for me, again, this is not saying that this is for sure going to happen the same for you, but I know that in my situation, like I said, these symptoms started in regular consistency at about 47. 53 right now, so I'm going into my 6th year. And it wasn't until just the past year where I started incorporating these interventions. So with that being said, this is not something where you can take Advil and it's going to go away, like your menstrual cramps, or you're going to get a heating pad and put it on your back, and that's going to be the only thing that you're dealing with. It's going to be an entire new regimen that you will have to test out and figure out how to manage it the best. It's not going to be a quick fix. You're going to have to experiment. You're going to have to try a few things. They're not going to work. Then you add in some other things. And eventually you will get to a space. You will get to a point where this list of interventions in combination in daily routines or weekly routines is going to be what it eventually works for you. So let me also reiterate with my symptoms, what I was feeling. Ooh, I'm gonna take a breath before I go through all of that. My sleep disruption was very real, and that sleep was disrupted, I think, by a couple of different things. I know hormonally there was a lot going on, and let me also say that I didn't have to have a blood test or anything to know that I was entering my menopausal phase. Once I started having disruptions with my monthly menstrual bleeding, it was pretty much game on. It was very quick that my period went away. I would have and I'm getting graphic here. I would have the first day of my period, it would be a very heavy, I won't call it like a bomb drop type of thing, but it was a very, very heavy flow day, heavier than what I had been used to experiencing. And then by the second day, it was a drip, it was a trickle. So it would be a huge, huge, heavy day. Day one, day two would be a trickle. And that was my first sign that something was changing. Then I started feeling the sleep disruptions. And I can say, at least for myself, I'm very sensitive to sleep disruptions because sleep is something that I have always prioritized. I am in the bed by 10 o'clock reading a book or watching Netflix kind of girl, and I'm dozing off by 10:30. That has been my routine for a very, very long time. So with that, it allows me to be an early riser. I cherish my early, quiet morning hours. So anyway, in the bed by 10 o'clock and asleep by 10:30. And I started having that regular 2 a.m., 3 a.m. wake up. And I assumed it was just stress. I just assumed I had a lot going on at the top of my career, managing a lot of different things. Back then, my boys were still at home. They had all of their activities that would fill up our calendars. And that was what I, kind of wrote it off to. Then I started experiencing the brain fog and the weird heart palpitations, the fatigue for no reason, definitely started gaining weight. And that was probably the most humbling piece of this because I still haven't totally gotten that part under control. And joint aches. So I can go from a seated position like I am right now and then stand right up and it's going to take me a minute to stand there and feel like, okay, everything's where it should be. I can stand up balanced on my own. And that all of these things just kind of descended all at the same time. And I'm just like, what the hell? What is I didn't like I said, I expected the hot flashes, the night sweats, all of these other things, like being in a room and not number 1, not knowing why I came into that room, and sometimes not even recognizing what the room was. So imagine all of this happening when you are trying to be at the top of your career game, when you're managing teams, when you're responsible for budgets, when you're having to show up on Zoom calls and run the damn call, and you can't even remember your last name. All of this was just a tremendous amount that was just freaking me the hell out, quite frankly. So I'll tell you that the first times that I first started mentioning this to my healthcare providers, it was brushed off. It really was. And no disrespect to them. I think a big part of it is that so much that is happening with women's health is just not studied the same way that other things are, have a big magnifying glass on. I also think that there's so much about what is happening with women's reproductive health that is sometimes suppressed. The conversation is hush hush because some folks are uncomfortable talking about periods. Some people are uncomfortable talking about what's happening with, their all of their lady parts. And we tend to just be a little bit more shy because, to talk, you can't talk about periods without it getting graphic. You can't talk about menstrual cramps without it being some kind of trauma dump. You definitely don't always recognize when menopause hits that all of these symptoms are kind of all happening for the same reason. So my first time going to a healthcare provider, it was to talk about the heart palpitations. And, it got their attention. They took it very seriously, but it was looking at what the symptom that I was describing in isolation, not how old I was, not that these other things were happening, not tying all of them together to say, "Oh, this is part of your menopause transition." It was looked at as you are somebody that's about to have a heart attack type of thing. And of course, the same random tests were taking place, and the question of, do you need some type of intervention that is just going to concentrate on that one symptom? And, I didn't feel right about that. So I give credit to my younger self for basically pushing back on that being a treatment option because it just didn't feel like I was dealing with heart issues. Again, not a medical doctor. I just knew in my gut that that wasn't it. So the other thing I started looking at was just my intake of supplements. And luckily, my husband is somebody that is very well versed with supplements and quality supplements and just random things to take on a regular daily basis that's going to level some things off. So this is what I started taking. I'm going to give you the whole list and I got to read some notes because again, this is not my comfort zone. But I started with a basic multivitamin. And with that multivitamin, it was an over 50 multivitamin. So of course, what would be considered the silver versions, for seniors or that kind of crap. I had to, very humbling when you realize that shit, I'm in that category. When they talking about old people, they talking about me. So that multivitamin was the first piece. Then, as I started getting serious about what else might be needed, I did have some blood work done. I did talk to a medical professional who I'm still working with right now that wanted to really understand where my deficiencies were. And that was incredibly helpful. It's kind of like pulling up the car hood and you can see that your oil is needing to be changed and all of these other fluid levels are needing to be topped off. And so having that blood work done, I was able to see exactly where I was needing specific support. That being said, already was taking the over 50 multivitamin. I also needed thyroid support, which I wasn't expecting that, but that is one supplement that I'm taking daily. A DHEA supplement, which is going to be the omega fatty acids and magnesium combination. Also taking a pre-biotic, post-biotic fiber dose every single day. These are the daily things that I'm taking with food, with my breakfast first thing in the morning. And eventually I also was just watching my diet altogether. So I've made sure that I increase my water, or at least that I'm consistent with my water. I won't say that I hit my numbers perfectly every single day, but I try to make sure that I have this one tumbler that I keep. And if I fill up that tumbler about 3 times a day, with drinking all the water, then I know I've done fairly well. If I can hit 4 refills, then I know I'm fantastic. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I've had to restructure the way that I eat my meals because one thing that was happening is I would be in control of hunger and cravings and all of that jazz early in the day. But as the day would creep on, the afternoons were a little bit, I don't know, maybe that's when, work was stressful or, things would just feel like I was needing to grasp onto something, but it would be that 4 o'clock hour, 4 o'clock hour when I needed salt. And that would be chips, that would be salty popcorn, things like that. I noticed that once that hour mark hit, it kind of went downhill for the rest of the day. So I'm snacking and I start doing a lot of mindless nibbling. I start making choices where I'm not really considering the nutritional value. I'm just needing that quick hit, whatever it may be. But like I said, it was that time of day when I was normally needing something crunchy and salty. And once I would start nibbling on these things, I would not have an off switch. So it would be constant mindless snacking from that point on until I would go to bed, in addition to eating my last meal of the day. So what I would have learned to start doing is I have a protein centric breakfast. And that's probably going to be like 2 eggs and maybe an English muffin, maybe some turkey bacon. But basically, instead of having what I would normally eat, which would be a bowl of oatmeal, I would instead go to the protein heavy meal for early in the day. That would get me to a point where I was fairly satisfied and I just was I felt like if I got a good start, then that was a check box in the right direction. For lunch, I've had to kinda shift to where it was also protein centric, but then I'd have to have a fiber source because something else that has happened in this season is that I recognize I'm suffering from chronic constipation. I don't know if this is a menopausal symptom. It is an Aquila symptom, and I've just had to get on top of that. So, making sure that I have some type of beans or salad or mixed vegetables along with a protein source. And for protein for me is normally like a piece of salmon, some shrimp. I'm not a pescatarian, but I do enjoy seafood. So usually that protein source is some type of seafood. That's just where my taste buds are. And then have some type of fiber rich side item along with it. And then later in the day, I still allow myself to have a snack if I need it. But for later in the day, what I'm noticing is that if I cut off my real serious meals, my last meal of the day, about 6 o'clock, maybe 7 if I'm pushing it, and then I don't eat the rest of the evening, I'm able to go to bed at my regular time and I sleep better throughout the night if I do not have a heavy meal on my stomach before I go to bed. And that means that I got to cut off, if I'm going to have something heavy, I've got to cut off all the eating between 6 and 7 at the absolute latest, preferably 6, or I have something super, super light for dinner that is gonna be easily digestible, and that has allowed me to get more consecutive nights of continuous sleep that is not disrupted by my body trying to break down a heavy meal or any sugar spikes with my system or the night sweats, whatever. All of that has been brought under control as a result. Now, speaking of the eating, if you are, a long-term fan of this podcast, then you know that a few months ago I started taking a GLP-1, and that is a weekly injection that happens. You will look at pictures of me from, 6 months ago to now, and you probably won't see a big difference in weight loss. I've lost a very minimal amount of weight. And you're just like, well, okay, well, stop taking it. It's not working or whatever. But here's the thing. It is funny, and every time that I tell somebody this, I had a very positive side effect. I didn't lose haven't lost all the weight, I'm still on it, and I did have a brief period where I actually paused the injections, but one positive unexpected side effect is that by taking my weekly GLP-1 shot, it instantly suppressed my hot flashes. Okay. Remember, this is me sharing what has happened to me. If you also are on a GLP-1 and you've had this as a unexpected side effect, I would love to hear your perspective. I want to know if I'm the only one that is going through this. But that is what encouraged me to keep taking the shot because even though I wasn't losing the weight and I'm still spending the money on this shot, this is an investment. One thing I can say that was unexpected is that my hot flashes went away almost instantly. So I took my first shot in last summer and this is Houston heat and humidity. So I'm dealing with that plus my internal heater that's always happening at unexpected times. But within about 2 days, no kidding, my hot flashes were suppressed, and I have mentioned this to my healthcare provider, said, "Is this a common thing?" or whatever, and she was as surprised as I was, but that was my motivation to keep going even though I wasn't getting the expected results of the weight loss. So, just keep that in mind, that was one thing that helped me. As I mentioned before about being able to cut off my eating at about 6, 7 o'clock at the absolute latest, I believe that being on the GLP-1 that is helping me not have to eat or snack throughout the rest of the evening so that I can go to bed and fall asleep into a nice deep sleep on an empty stomach. So I think that, even though I'm not seeing everything that I want with this shot, I am seeing these residual side effects that are very, very welcome. In addition to that, I've told you about the supplements that I'm taking every single day. I also have this weekly regimen where, yes, the GLP-1 shot is one thing that I am on. I'm also taking a testosterone shot that is once a week. I am also taking a progesterone pill and an estradiol. So that rounds out my hormone therapy, so to speak. And this is all according to what was evident in my blood work. So, what I have been told is that these levels are going to fluctuate. So, what I'm on right now and what is working right now is eventually going to have to be adjusted. So, I go back, I don't even know what the interval is for when my blood work is done. I just show up when they tell me to do so. So, all of that being said, I've got my daily regimen of supplements. I've got my weekly interventions, my weekly regimen of shots that I'm taking. And then I've had to adjust what I'm eating on a meal by meal basis and recognize what I need at each meal throughout the schedule of my day so that ultimately it leads me into a more satisfying night of sleep. And let me be very honest about this decision to go on some type of hormone therapy. It was something that I just did not think was necessary early on. When I first started feeling these symptoms, I really thought, okay, I can handle this. Or I depended on some traditional, maybe outdated medical advice that it was going to cause some side effects with a greater breast cancer risk or other things. And I've since changed my mind with all of that. I don't have any genetic markers that put me at a greater risk for breast cancer or any other cancers, so to speak. Doesn't mean I'll never get it. It just means that there's nothing evident right now that says I should not go in this particular direction. So I felt like my personal risk factors were okay. I did have the lab work that was basically saying that not only was I deficient, like I had no hormones. I mean, it was like somebody emptied that well and there was not a drop of anything else left in there. It gave me a little bit of calm and validation knowing that the severity of my symptoms wasn't just in my head. Getting the blood work done, getting the test done, and really seeing this data on a chart was just like, okay, you there's no reason for you not to do this. There's no reason for you to think that you can handle this on your own. It was just unnecessary. And I don't want anybody to think that, oh, my symptoms aren't as severe, or I don't think I have to. Girl, please. You get to decide what you want to deal with. You get to decide if this is worth an intervention or not. And you don't have to be in a situation where someone's going to grade your pain or your suffering at a severe level versus a moderate level. That is your decision 1000%. And once I was able, and like I said, the light bulb, everything just clicked for me when I was able to see the blood work for myself and see where my levels were and where they were severely low and where they were kind of moderate. And I just decided, okay, this is it. This is what I needed to convince myself that it was okay. This was my permission slip to go ahead and get some type of medical intervention. So I say this again 50,000 times, I'll repeat it, that this is what worked for me, but I want you to find out what's going to work for you. But this is not all, because these are the medical interventions that I had, but I will tell you that I still have to manage my stress from a day-to-day basis. And I've recognized some things, some very simple things that don't cost a penny, that have helped me just get through the day to day. And one thing I've noticed is that I still have these weird, I don't know, weird mood swings that I can't really explain. And I'll have those feelings of anxiousness for absolutely no reason. The day could be going well, work could be going smoothly, and then just all of a sudden, I feel like I'm about to come out of my skin. And when those feelings start creeping up, I recognize them now. Before I didn't, but now when I know when those feelings are starting to creep up, one thing that has helped me, that has been a magic response, or a magic way to get past these moments, is to go for a walk in nature. Not a walk on a treadmill, not something on an internal walking pad, but where I physically walk out the front door and I go for a walk outside. 30 minutes is, for me, that has been that magic threshold where I come back and I feel like everything that is got me bugging out just flushes out of my system. Whether I work up a sweat or if I go just lollygagging for 30 minutes outside, if I go for a walk, get away from the screens, get away from the phones, all that jazz, that has been my magic bullet for being able to just flip my mood and my stress level. Another thing that I have to do is incorporate, and I will say I can do that just as a, moment's notice type of intervention, but I also schedule it. So I try to make sure that I am on a beautiful park walking trail 2 to 3 times a week that I actually schedule. But I can also, like I said, end of the day when work is done, when, all other appointments are taken care of, if I take a 30-minute walk outside, then that is something that helps me. I also try to make sure that I'm in the gym lifting heavy weights 2 to 3 times. I'm putting this 3 up here. 3 times is the goal. Sometimes it's only twice a week, but making that a regular part of the routine. Not that I'm going to the gym to do a bunch of high interval training, not that I'm going to the gym to do a spin class. These days at my age, going and lifting the heavy weights feels good. And I walk out of there feeling like, not that I'm completely just, smashed and just feeling like, I've thrown up a lung or something. I walk out of there feeling satisfactorily stressed. Is that a word? Okay. Either way, but I walk out feeling like I've accomplished something. So aiming for that to happen 2 to 3 times a week where I'm getting all of the muscle groups is helping me for now. The other thing I've already talked about is my sleep routine that has always been who I was, whether as a teenager, as a young mother. I have always been the one that went to bed on time, and keeping that regular schedule has been, I won't even say a good suggestion. It has been the rule in this phase of life, so that whatever sleep disruption happens throughout the night, I know that I at least controlled when I laid down. I may not control everything that happens, what other disruptions take place during the wee hours of the morning, but the part that I can control, that's what I focus on. So I make sure that I hit my sheets at about the same time each evening. And one other thing that I've had to incorporate, and this is something that takes a little more work, and you might laugh when you think about it, but I have to make myself have intentional downtime. Again, think about, let me set the whole picture for you. I am an empty nester right now, so I don't have anybody else that is needing for me to cook big meals for them. I'm not bathing any babies. I'm not having to go through the school drop off or pickup line. My evenings are my own. And sometimes I'm working with clients in the evenings, but when I don't, I have to make myself get up from the computer. I have to make myself walk away from my workstation and go have intentional downtime. So that intentional downtime could be reading a book. It could be going for a walk in nature, like I've already mentioned. Or one thing that I've really started to enjoy is sitting down instead of watching TV shows, watching actual movies. You're like, okay, this ain't no intervention. This ain't no medical intervention. It has been a direct response to lowering my stress at the end of the evening. If I can turn on Netflix or turn on Prime or whatever and find a 2-hour movie to watch where I'm actually sitting there being still, I'm not scrolling, I'm not flipping through channels or anything. I'm sitting still and I am allowing my mind to get lost in a story. That has been a game changer to bring my stress levels down at the end of the evening so that I can just relax. And by the time I'm done with the movie, it's time to shower or whatever, take my progesterone pill and lay my ass down so I can try to get some sleep for the night. All of this together, it's the daily vitamins and supplements, the weekly shots that I'm taking, then the physical fitness and, dietary changes, all of that put together has become my routine. And it's a long list of things that I have to check off and make sure that I've covered or that I took properly every single day and every single week. And you're probably thinking like, oh girl, I ain't got time for all that. I was that person. I was you until things started working. And I say that with, I'm not exaggerating. I am not trying to hype this up any more than it needs to be. But all of these things, as hard as it is, I won't say it's hard, but as much as it is to remember to do, as much of a long checklist as it is for me to stay on top of, if it wasn't working, I wouldn't bother. But it is working. And that's the whole point. That what's happening right now, it has been over the past year that I've truly had some things that I've been experimenting with. But I will tell you that once everything leveled out, It was very noticeable. I couldn't tell you what was the final ingredient on the list that made everything come into balance. I can't tell you that I did all of these things at once and it worked perfectly. No, I added each element gradually. And over the last few months, I can say with confidence, I've hit some balance. I've hit an area where things feel okay, but it might change. I'm constantly getting older. My body is still transitioning. So what I'm doing right now might look different from what I have to do 6 months from now. If I ever get off this GLP-1 or and lose some weight or whatever, it could be different all over again. But I will tell you that all of this has been a game changer, and I feel very much like I have come back into my own, and I'm having fun again. I'm able to leave the house and not be in total fear, anxious, preparation for having 4 or 5 hot flashes, like pouring sweat hot flashes before I would come back home. I don't have to carry a change of a shirt. I don't have to bring towels with me because I think Imma have sweat going down my back and into my butt crack type of thing. But it's this is sounding a little bit crude, I understand, but these are all real things that I was doing every single day. And now that has all kind of flown on out the window. It is not my reality anymore to just sit and suffer through all of these symptoms, assuming that I can push through on my own or that I even have to push through on my own. So with all of this, I can just say that I'm not suffering anymore. And I'm going to continue to tweak it. I'm going to continue to seek the advice of my healthcare providers so that as things change, I can evolve and I can attack all of these symptoms as they show their ugly faces. So, my dear, if you got anything from this episode, if there's any part of this that resonated with you, please drop a comment because I would love to hear what other women are doing so that they also can be at the top of their game. But if you've just got more questions about my experience and where I've been able to make some changes, do so. I will link some things that I am taking in the description so that you can, have the full list and maybe even take that into a conversation with your own healthcare provider if it'll at least help you start the conversation. But remember, everybody's body is different. Everyone is going to have a different set of symptoms that will show up. But if you get to a point where you can at least talk about it with more confidence, if you can at least advocate for yourself more thoroughly, then we already are starting to win. So if you lasted this long through the episode, I appreciate it. I do want to hear from you. If maybe there's something else that you want to discuss or you want some big sister advice, I'm happy to provide it for you. But definitely share this episode with any other women in your life that might also be questioning what types of menopausal interventions that they need, because this is a season where I want you to win. I want us all to win. So thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.